Sham Saradava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Saradava Nalalida Loka Tranaya karunya gana ganatam praptasya kalyana gurnana vasya bande gurashi charunara vrindam praptasya kalyana gurnana vasya bande gurashi charunara vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananrita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Romanchakam Taranga Bhajo Bande Gurashi Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Joktasya bhaktamsa niyunjatopi Bande Gurashi charanara vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Kritva eva trupti bhajato sadeva Vande Gurashi charanara vrindam Bhajato sadeva Vande Gurashi Shiradikama Bhavayora para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Shri Radhikama Bhavayora para Madhurya Leela Pratikshana Danalalupasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sanalala Pasa Gurashi Charanarami Ne Kunjayo no Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Vere Jokte Apekshaniya Ne Kunjayo no Ratikeli Tatrati daksha oti balavasya Vande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Ati balavasya Vande Gurashi Sakcha Dharidena Samasta Shastri Ruktastathava Vyataiva Sadhavi Kintu Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gurashi Charana Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Dayam stovam tasya yasatrin sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Same Nitina Mine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Same Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Nama Krishna Jadavaye Nama Jadavaye Madhavaye Keshavaye Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Srimadhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Nitai go Haribo, 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 Nitai go Haribo, Haribo. Premanande, Haribo. Jai Vishnu Paramansa Prabhajaka Astuttara Sarashishi Maharaj Divine Grace Abhay Charavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Vibhiti Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patita Udhara Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Ananta Koch Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन के जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद मंगल चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृणावतार की जय गोलोकेर प्रमदान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की जय जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहदांग ट्रांसलेंट बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप नारदा कुंज समकुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। तेलोश विश्वेश्वर नीलमाधव की जय। श्री श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु समस्पुत्र देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाश न करि सिंह भगवान की जय। सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर हरि परमानंद हरि भक्त। All glory to the Assembly bodies. All glory to the Assembly bodies. All glory to the Assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gaurang Hari.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Lada Daine. Prahlada Lada Daine. Hiranyakashe Purvakshaha.
Rasi Purvakshaha.
Shila Chankhana Khalaye.
Sila Tankana Khalaye.
Hito Narsimha Parato Narsimha.
Hito Nisimha Parato Nisimha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha.
Jata Jata Yami Tato Nisimha.
Bahir Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha.
Bahir Nisimha Hridaye Nisimha.
Narasimhadim Sharanam Prapate.
Narasimhadim Sharanam Prapade.
Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narare Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare.
Tavakara Kamalavare Jagadisha Re, Jagadisha Re, Jai Jagadisha Re.
Keshavadrita Narare Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare.
Sabadita Narare Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re, Jai Jagadisha Re, Jai Jagadisha Re.
Jayo Narasingha Dev Jayo Narasingha Dev Jayo Narsingadev, Jayo Narsingadev. Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jayo Jayo Gurudev, 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 Jayo Jayo Gurudev.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari. Jai Gaura Pramanande. Shri Bhakti Parasara Vignashana Tyag Nishingare Bhagavan ki jai. Bhakta Shrestha Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai.
Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi.
Jaitomaya Sharanaloy Tara Vansha Purnahoy
Mara Sharanala Daravancha Purna
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi.
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Moraya Vilas, Vilas Kunjadi Oba.
Moraya Vilas, Vilas Kunjadi Oba.
Nayane Heri Bosada, Shugala Ruparasi.
Nayane Ribosada, Shugala Ruparasi.
Hey Nivedana Daro, Sakir Anugata.
Sakira yano katakara
Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi.
Seva yade kara diye Karani jadasi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namorahoy.
Ina Krishna Daseka Eye namora
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi.
Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi.
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Tati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Nanika Nisapaka Brahma Hatari Ganesha Tani Tani Prana Sande Gadate Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Tati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Nanika Nisapaka Brahma Hatari Ganesha Tani Tani Prana Sande Gadate Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Tati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade.
Kanisa Papani Brahma Tari Kanisa Tani Tani Prana Shanti Kalakina Pare Pare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani,
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitya Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitya Gaura Haribo.
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me a residence where the groves of Shri Vrindavan come. Thus within my vision, I will always behold the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I dare you to make me a follower of Kamatansis of Raj. Please give me the privilege of the personal service and make me an ornament servant. This very fallen and low to servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing loud Shri Radha Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikha Sthapan Ki Jai. Ito Darpanamandana Urmada Agnivapanam Shri Agari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Ananda Mudivadhanam Patipadam Purnam Sadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Jayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nam Akari Yodha Sarvashakti Sattvataminitta Anemakala Vedadisi Sabhakiparya Bhavamandamati Udhaivam Idisham Yajani Namuratma Vinanati Tena Sarvati Sahasana Amana Manadena Vitanya Svamani Nadhanam Nadanam Nasunare Kavitam Vajaganisha Kamai Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavata Bhakti Rahaitu Kitwai Vinanda Kanadakin Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan. When did the power towards the dust activate the years? In this time, Krishna fire conditional life of gives birth to death. The Sankirtan moment is the time and addiction for humanity at large. Because it spreads the way that addiction knows. It is the life of all friends and knowledge. It increases the ocean trends into bliss and enables us to fully test the nature to which always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can bring the open addiction to living things. Unless you have hundreds of millions of names but Krishna is holy. And these transcendental names, you have tested all your transcendental energies. It doesn't have and pass through chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of guidance, it enables us to easily approach by your holy names. But I'm found fortunate that I have no attraction to it. Once we chant holy names in the Lord in humble state of mind, think oneself the word on the strong street. One should be more tolerant than a tree. In order to sense of all the speech, we should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, and chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh my Lord, I have no desire to commit wealth. I have no desire to live good women. I don't want any number of power.
I only want you for this devotional service first. Practical. Oh, son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I return soon.
Yet there's some or other involved social growth and death. These people have in the social death. They see one of the atoms of the Lord. Oh my Lord, open my eyes. It gives me love. Flame constantly when I change the holy name. So when my voice choke out. So when the hairs on my body stand on it and the biggest expression of your name. Oh, forgive me. Killing your suppression. I must spend moments be like 12 years more. Days I fall from my eyes have torn between me. And I feel all taken in the world in your absence. I don't know one but Krishna is my Lord. And Ishwara, when he's so deeply under the rock, embrace or makes me broken hearted and I'm present before me. He's completely free to do anything and everything. For he is always my worship for the Lord and the magician. The should start to be there. Nothing offensive to my chanting the holiness of the Lord, but they holy. They are as follows: one,
Dedicated to lives of propagating the holy names of the Lord. Consider names of demigods, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature, or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version. Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna's imagination. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruit of activities or karma kanda. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To have complete faith in chanting holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Let's offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharani Visesa Sunyata Paskati Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yato Nivayad Itaratasya Teso Vidyaswarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha Tejo Vari Madam Yata Vini Mayo Yatra Trisargo Mesha Damna Svena Sudadi Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Timahi O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth, and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representation of water seen on fire or land seen on water, only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayam mulano Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kate Kim Vaparir Ishvaraha Sadyo Hidi Avarudyate Tra Kate Behi Sasusabhistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious sectors which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Yigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukhamutkad amritam dravyasamritam pibata bhagavatam rasam malayam muhuraho raska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire through Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hilyantak Stohi Bhadrani Vidunati Sahitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nasta prayesu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhaviti naistaki. In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta itaranavyadam Ditvam Sattve Prasidhati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasadam manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate Hridaya Grantis Chidyante Sarvasamsaya Shiyante Chashikarmani Krista Evat Manishwade. Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material perfection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Guru Vastika prayers. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is the ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. For my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna full kinds of delicious food. Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis, who at different times make different tastes or arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. For my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Nadiraja Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Chintamani Prakasat Masukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Gvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasatvanamaya Vamsi Pratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalabile Vishesha Asam Shyamam Chibangalalita Niyata Prakasam Nilasam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angyani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pashyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sad Ujjvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Nalayuvanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Fantastakoti Satavatsada Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatpe Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim Yat Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavitatiyo Manajastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhushaha Suktaryameva nikama pratitaistuvanti. Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse number 15. Narayana Paraveda Deva Narayanangajaha Narayana Paraloka Narayana Paramaka. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and the different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. According to the Vedanta Sutras, Shastra Yonitvat, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls. And any literature not meant for reviving God consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. Narayana Para means the devotees who are only engaged in worshiping the Lord or serving the Lord. Such deluding books of knowledge, not having Narayana as their aim, are not at all knowledge, but are the playgrounds for crows who are interested in the rejected refuse of the world. Any book of knowledge, science or art, must lead to the knowledge of Narayana, otherwise it must be rejected. That is the way of advancement of knowledge. The supreme worshipable deity is Narayana. The demigods are recommended secondarily for worship in relation to Narayana because the demigods are assisting hands in the management of universal affairs. As the officers of the kingdom are respected due to their relation to the king, the demigods are worshipped due to their relation to the Lord. Without the Lord's relation, worship of the demigods is unauthorized, avidipurvakam, just as it is improper to worship the leaves and branches of a tree without watering its root. Therefore, the demigods are also dependent on Narayana. The lokas, or different planets, are attractive because they have different varieties of life and bliss, partially representing the Satchitananda Vigraha. Everyone wants the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the material world, such an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is progressively realized in the upper planets, but after reaching there, one is inclined to achieve further progress along the path back to Godhead. Duration of life, with a proportionate quantity of bliss and knowledge, may be increased from one planet to another. One can increase the duration of life to thousands and hundreds of thousands of years in different planets, but nowhere is there eternal life. But one who can reach the highest planet, that of Brahma, can aspire to reach the planets in the spiritual sky, where life is eternal. Therefore, the progressive journey from one planet to another culminates in reaching the supreme planet of the Lord, Madhama, where life is eternal and full of bliss and knowledge. All different kinds of sacrifice are performed just to satisfy Lord Narayana with a view to reach him, and the best sacrifice recommended in this age of Kali is Sankirtan Yagya, the mainstay of the devotional service of a Narayana Para devotee. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Vedic literatures are made by, and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is very similar to two verses. The next verse also, together with this verse, 15 and 16, are also mentioned in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, second chapter, second or third chapter. So, therefore, everything in life should be meant for the pleasure of Narayana or Krishna. And anything that's not pointing to Narayana, any book of so-called knowledge or how to do it, do things, or whatever, that doesn't relate to Narayana should be rejected as rubbish, as foul, misleading, so-called literature. So this seems to, and that's why Prabhupada says, any book of knowledge, science or art, must lead to the knowledge of Narayana. Otherwise, it must be rejected. That is the way of advancement of knowledge. So this is a very strong statement by Prabhupada, and it raises certain questions in the mind of let's say, normal people. They say, well, then how do we learn anything? Well, you learn everything by studying Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And then they could say, well, how do I learn, like differential calculus or geometry or this or that? Well, all that knowledge is there in Bhagavatam also. But you have to be able to decipher it. That doesn't mean that knowledge is lacking in the Bhagavatam. It means that one must hear the Bhagavatam very carefully from bona fide devotees. Then one can understand everything properly, in its proper perspective. So, if there is some mundane knowledge that can be used in the service of Krishna, then that's okay. Now, what kind of mundane knowledge can you use in the service of Krishna? Well, you can learn how to train horses or cows to do work, like pulling carts or grinding grains or grinding oil, extracting oil from oil beans or plants or nuts. So, therefore, there is a way of assimilating or the material, let's say, mundane knowledge and directing it to Krishna. So, we're not against any knowledge that can be used in Krishna's service. We are against any knowledge that, any so-called knowledge that leads us away from Krishna and ignores Krishna. So the devotee knows how to make everything Krishna conscious. This is explained 4th chapter, 24th verse, where it says, Avartamam Brahma Havir Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam. Brahmaeva Tena Gantavya Brahma Karma Samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So, everything in the material world is actually spiritual when it's dovetailed into Krishna's service. But we only see the material aspect of it if we use things for our selfish purpose, for sense gratification. So this is a very profound verse 424, because it says basically, Prabhupada says, how activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But, for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds, meaning yogurt. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth in the Gita. This process is generally known as yagya, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahma, or Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma-jyoti. His spiritual effulgence, everything that exists is situated in that Brahma-jyoti. But when the jyoti is covered by illusion, maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together Brahman, or the absolute truth. In other words, all these paraphernalia that we use in Krishna's service becomes spiritualized by contact with Krishna. The material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. So whenever we're using material things for our own satisfaction, that is Maya. That's an illusion, because everything is meant for Krishna, just like it says, Narayana Para Veda. So the Vedic literatures are meant for glorifying the Lord. Deva Narayana Gaja. So the devas or demigods are meant for serving the Lord. Narayana Para Loka. And everything, all the planets are meant for the sake of the Lord. And Narayana Para Makaha. And all sacrifices are performed just to please the Lord. You see. So this verse and verse 424 are related, because Krishna consciousness is the process of spiritualizing everything. So anything mundane or material can be spiritualized if it's used in the service of the Lord. Therefore, Prabhupada says, matter dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi, or trance. Anything done in such a transcendental consciousness is called yagya, or sacrifice for the Absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything, becomes one in the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. So, someone would say, well, then how would you use marijuana in the service of the Lord? Right? Well, not by smoking it. But you can make paper, you can make fuel, you can make clothing with the hemp plant, which is a type of marijuana. But you can't use it to, you can't offer it to smoke, right? But you can make byproducts of it that can be useful in Krishna consciousness. Like I bought a marijuana shirt once, or a hemp shirt once, and it works just fine as a shirt. And there's hemp paper, and you can make hemp biodiesel fuel, and there's a whole bunch of things you can do with the hemp plant. So everything, when you have knowledge, everything can be used in Krishna's service. But it requires knowledge, and we're getting that knowledge by studying the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, we have to understand that everything in the material world is ultimately meant for the pleasure of the Lord. So, therefore, we have to adjust our thinking in that way. Someone might say, well, how do you offer a snake to the Lord? Well, there are ways, like snake venom can be used for healing certain diseases. And, I mean, we don't eat the snake, although people do eat snakes. And we don't play with snakes, it's dangerous. But when a person is expert, they can extract the venom and then use it as medicine. So there is a use of everything in the service of the Lord. And like, for example, there are certain men or women that catch snakes, break their fangs, and then use them as entertainment for tourists. Just like when I went to Morocco, there was a snake charmer there, and he had a cobra. And he was playing on his flute. The cobra comes out of the basket and raises its hood like this, and everyone's like frightened. And then he picks the snake up and goes around like this to everyone. He puts the snake in your face, right? But the snake doesn't have any fangs. Therefore, even if it bites, it cannot instill or inject poison into your body, right? Anyway, that's not exactly using the snake in Krishna's service, but there are ways that the snake venom can be used in Krishna's service. So there is one way or another to use everything. And then one time a devotee asked Prabhupada, well, how do you use the atomic bomb in Krishna's service? And Prabhupada said, yeah, you use it to bomb the communists. So there's a way of using everything in Krishna's service. It just requires some knowledge. So the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. So when we're looking at the material things to use for sense gratification, that's Maya, or that's sense gratification. It's the same thing. Sense gratification equals Maya equals illusion, right? But when the same thing is used in the service of Krishna, it becomes Krishna conscious, or it's Krishna consciousness. So the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. That's the key sentences in this purport. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme, or the spiritual reality. So when the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it's said to be in samadhi or trance. So we can transform our mind also into pure spirituality, our body into pure spirituality, everything, because the body is made of matter, and matter comes from Krishna, and when it's used in Krishna's service, it manifests its spiritual quality. So, therefore, these verses 15 and 16 are related closely to Brahma, in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 24th verse. And the key phrase here, or the key thought here, is that the absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman. So, when we decided to build a new temple, we wanted to make everything on this property spiritual. How do you do that? Well, you use everything in the service of Krishna. And to make sure that you're doing that, there are deities of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, and Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, and Lord Ramachandra, and Hanuman, Lakshman, and Sita Devi, and Jagannath, and Gaur Nitai. So we are offering to the deities every day, making offerings of material things. But by offering them, they regain their spiritual quality. But if you just eat something, that is Maya. But if you offer it to the Lord and accept it back as prasadam, that is Krishna consciousness. So you see, taking ordinary things and spiritualizing them, that's what devotees do. And they, in other words, as it says here, that Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. Okay, so in this purport today, there's some interesting points, and one of them I'm going to focus on now is it's about transforming things into spirituality, or spiritual. So, therefore, in the fourth canto, verse number, let's see, what verse is it? Fourth canto, verse number, second canto, fourth chapter, verse number 20. Let's take a look at that. It says something very interesting. This verse says, he, the super soul, and he is the super soul and the supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Shiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered, with awe and veneration, may that Supreme Absolute be pleased with me. So this is a very significant verse that we've already read, but I want to go over it a little bit more, because there are certain points in it that are extremely relevant to what we're reading today. In the purport it says, the Supreme Lord, the Personality Godhead, although the Lord of all followers of different paths is knowable only by those who are above all pretensions. Now, what's a pretension? It's basically, look it up in a dictionary, it's basically a false or misconception about ourselves. And this is what keeps us in the material world, these misconceptions about ourselves and who we are. You have a definition of it? Pretension. Pretensions. Okay, basically it's saying you assume something about yourself that is not really true. And then you use that to make yourself prominent. Right? So read the definition. Affectation means accepting a false identity. Yeah, so this is going on all the time in the material world. And this false affectation, I am, I am white, or I am black, or I am this, or I am that. And then one assumes this false identity. They falsely identify themselves with some material quality or a bunch of material qualities. And then they go off track completely in their life due to this misconception. So it says here, the Supreme Lord, or Personality Godhead, is knowable only by those who are above all pretensions. You have to be free of all these false identifications that one makes. They're called upadis. Sarvapadin nirmukta tatparat vena nirmalam. Hishikena hishikesha sevanam bhakti uttama. So when I was talking, when we identify ourselves wrongly, that's called an upadi. It's a false identification. It's like someone might say, I'm a homosexual, or someone might say, I am a white supremacist, or someone might say, I'm a Black Lives Matter follower. So all these are false pretensions. That's not who we really are. So one cannot understand Krishna as long as we have these upadis, these false identifications. Everyone is searching for eternal peace or eternal life, and with an aim to this destination. Everyone is either studying the Vedic scriptures or other religious scriptures, or undergoing severe austerity as empiric philosophers, as mystic yogis, or as unalloyed devotees, etc. But the Supreme Lord is perfectly realized only by the devotees, because they are above all pretensions. He just mentioned it again. Above all pretensions. Above all these false identifications. And this is, you could summarize life as searching to find out who you are. Right? Sometimes someone gets married, and after 20 years of marriage, they get a divorce, and they suddenly realize that I'm not really a heterosexual, I'm a homosexual. It's after, having kids and being married and all that. So it's this search for who you are. And most people end up with the wrong idea of who I am. Right? And because of that, they never make any spiritual progress, and they remain in a cycle of birth and death. So then it says, but the Supreme Lord is perfectly realized only by the devotees, because they are above all pretensions. Those who are on the path of self-realization are generally classified as karmis, jnanis, yogis, or devotees of the Lord. The karmis, who are much attracted by the fruitive activities of the Vedic rituals, are called bhukti kami, or those who desire material enjoyment. The jnanis, who try to become one with the Supreme by mental speculation, are called mukti kami. And those who desire liberation from material, or those who desire liberation from material existence. The mystic yogis, who practice different types of austerities for attainment of 8 kinds of material perfection, and who ultimately meet the supersoul Paramatma in trance, are called siddhi kami, or those who desire the perfection of becoming finer than the finest, becoming heavier than the heaviest, getting everything desired, having control over everyone, creating everything liked, etc. All these are abilities of a powerful yogi, but the devotees of the Lord do not want anything like that for self-satisfaction. That's the point. They want only to serve the Lord, because the Lord is great, and as living entities, they are eternally subordinate parts and parcels of the Lord. So, when we learn by reading Bhagavatam in the Association of Devotees how great the Lord actually is, beyond any anybody else's abilities, then we become a devotee. It's because when we realize the greatness of the Lord, just like if you meet someone, like once there was a man went into a sauna or a Turkish bath, and he was sitting in the steam room, and another man came in and sat near him, and they were both sitting together and they were chatting a little bit, and basically all they have on is a towel, right? So then after a while they both went out, they took a shower, and they decided to go home, each one. So they're in the locker room where they're changing to their clothes. The first man noticed that the other man had really expensive clothing, Gucci or one of those expensive trademarks. And I mean, you can get a suit. I remember when I was a student in college, I went into a second-hand store, and I needed to have a suit, so I bought a suit that probably belonged to some dead guy, and ended up in the second-hand store, and I bought it for like, I think it was like $5. Right? But you could buy a suit that costs $5,000. These high quality designer suits are extremely expensive. So the man noticed that that the other guy, who he was sitting next to and talking to a little bit, when they just had a towel on, he put on a $5,000 suit. Right? He knew what that was. He never had one himself, but he knew what it was. And then they walk out, and then usually they keep your expensive jewelry or watches in a safe deposit box in the entrance. So they walk out, and he's standing behind the other guy, and he notices what's in the safe deposit box that the man received. There was a Rolex watch that's worth $35,000, and there was a ring that definitely was worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And everything he put on himself that he got from the box was extremely expensive. So this made him really interested, And then he also got dressed, and he got his watch and different things. And he walks outside, and he sees this guy is getting into this huge limousine that's worth at least $300,000-$400,000, and he's got a chauffeur. And he's saying to him, "My God, why didn't I ask this guy more questions of who he was?" He didn't realize, because he just had a towel on like him, and he was sweating in the steam room. You see, so then he realized, boy, I've missed the opportunity in my life. And he kept going back to that steam room, but he never saw that guy again. You see, so when you realize how great someone is, that really, impresses you, and you want to know that person. So we're learning on a gradual basis how great Krishna is, and there's no one equal to him, no one greater than him. Everyone, including Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, they're all subordinate to him, and not even close. There's not just one universe. Krishna has created millions of universes, and other universes. Like our Brahma is relatively young. He only has 4 heads. There are other universes where the Brahmas have 10,000 heads, right? Because it's much more complicated. We have no idea of the length and breadth of Krishna's powers. But we're learning gradually by reading the Bhagavatam. So when you meet a person who is the greatest personality of Godhead, then you surrender, because you say, I want to be close to this person, right? It's just like a mosquito that sits on the head of the king. Well, the mosquito is actually in control, because when he bites the king goes, ouch, He's like under the control of the mosquito. Well, we don't want to be like the mosquito, but we want to be just like it says, Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sadapasyanti Suraya. All the devatas are aiming for the lotus feet of the Lord. And demigods are the most powerful people in the universe. And they're all aspiring, including Lord Brahma, to be at the lotus feet of the Lord. So we will also aspire like that by associating with genuine devotees and hearing about the glories of the Lord. So here it says that, okay, there are karma yogis and jnana yogis and astanga yogis, and but a living entity by his constitutional position cannot be void of all desires. The mukti kami, and siddhi kami all desire something for personal satisfaction, but the niskama, devotees of the Lord, desire everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. So that's the difference between these self-interested people and the pure devotees. Self-interested people have some desire for themselves. The devotee only desires the satisfaction of the Lord. They are completely dependent. The pure devotees are completely dependent on the orders of the Lord and are always ready to discharge their duty for the satisfaction of the Lord. So, this is an extremely important verse and purport. And then later on, it continues. It says, it quotes the verse, Krishna Bhakti Niskama Ateva Santa, Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Asanta. So this important verse, it says, those who are after fruitive results for their pious activities, those who desire salvation and identity with the Supreme, and those who desire material perfections of mystic power are all restless because they want something for themselves. But the devotee is completely peaceful because he has no demand for himself and is always ready to serve the desire of the Lord. The conclusion is therefore that the Lord is for everyone, because no one can achieve the result of his respective desires without Krishna's sanction. But as stated by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 8:9, all such results are awarded by Krishna only. For the Lord is Adishvara, the original controller of everyone, namely the Vedantas, the great Karma Kandiyas, the great religious leaders, the great performers of austerity, and all who are striving for spiritual advancement. But ultimately, he is realized by the pretensionless devotees only. Therefore, special stress is given to the devotional service of the Lord by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So 3 times he mentioned pretension. 2 times pretension, the 3rd time pretensionless. So the devotees are pretensionless. They don't have all these false identities. They know that they're the eternal servant of the Lord. Now, there's another important point, and I'll try and make this real quick and then we'll stop. And that is, everyone ultimately, if they think carefully, they want eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Right? They want to be happy, they want to be knowledgeable, and they want to attain love, real love. So, this is a type of prosperity. If you have eternal life and you have eternal bliss and knowledge, you are happy and you're prosperous. It's opulence. Well, there is in Christianity this idea, and the idea that you can become prosperous by being Krishna conscious. But the understanding of what that means is what's in question. So what does it mean to be prosperous? Well, let's see what happened in Christianity. There's a movement in Christianity called prosperity theology. This has been going on for some time. And basically, it means the Christians, ministers, when they preach this, they say, God wants you to be prosperous. He wants you to be rich. And the way to be rich is that you have to tithe to the church. Tithe meaning you have to give donations to the church. And let's see what it says here. Probably the most unique teaching relative to the consensus belief of biblical scholars is the teaching that Jesus Christ died spiritually. In their teaching as it regards Jesus' death on the cross, they have said that Jesus Christ became a sinner, died, lost, and went to the burning side of hell, where he was tortured by the devil for 3 days and nights until God spoke and said that's enough. Upon God's confession, Jesus became the first born-again man. Okay, so this is their philosophy, right? And this, among other teachings, is an effort to deify man and bring God and Jesus Christ down to the level of man. And the distinctive word of faith teachings include physical, emotional, financial, relational, and spiritual healing or prosperity for those who skillfully manage their covenant with God. The movement, this is the movement of prosperity theology in Christianity. The movement urges believers to speak what they desire in agreement with the promises and provisions of the Bible as an affirmation of God's plans and purposes. They believe this is what Jesus meant when he said in Mark 11:22-24 that believers shall have whatsoever they say and pray with faith. The term word of faith itself is derived from Romans 10:8, which speaks of the word of faith that we preach. In other words, they're saying that in prosperity theology, if you make a statement to God that I want to be rich, I want to be prosperous, you're making a statement, and you have a right to make that statement, and God will satisfy that statement. Now, this is all false teaching. But yet, it also says that in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, it also says that devotee will be prosperous. So what is the difference between the Christian idea of prosperity theology and the devotee, or the Krishna conscious idea that the devotee will be prosperous? When one is prosperous as a devotee, that means that they have complete faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as he says, he promises in Bhagavad Gita, it says, he says that he will provide everything you lack, provide what you lack, and preserve what you have. That means that he'll make Krishna consciousness easily available to you, and when you engage in Krishna consciousness, he'll protect you so you don't fall down. That's what it actually means. That's what prosperity actually is. That Krishna consciousness is easily available. Therefore, when Prabhupada had these temples built to make Krishna consciousness easily available for anyone who wants to get out of the cycle of birth and death. So you walk in the door, and right away, you are given so many things to enhance your ability to be Krishna conscious. We're giving all the tools necessary to be Krishna conscious, or all the means necessary to be Krishna conscious. There's prasadam, there are classes, there's arti, there's kirtan, there's service, etc. And if you begin to become Krishna conscious, the Lord will protect you so you can remain in Krishna consciousness as long as you are associating with good devotees and hearing regularly. That's what it means by prosperity in Krishna consciousness. It's not the same idea of you're ordering God to make you prosperous. And it's basically a materialistic concept of wealth and health. Right? The devotee is not so much interested in wealth and health. The devotee is interested in pleasing Krishna. through the instructions of the bona fide guru. So we'll discuss this a little bit more, because this is a main theme in modern Christianity, especially in the United States, and they've spread it all over the world. And their idea of prosperity is completely different than what is understood in Krishna consciousness. Ananya chintayantamam ye jana paryapasati. So that verse is the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in which Krishna promises to provide what his devotee lacks and preserve what he has. But the understanding of what that means is that Tesam nitya bhyuktanam yogasimam bahamyaham. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, by the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga, and when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable conditioned life. So that is prosperity. Okay, we'll stop right there. And are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. In verse 4.24, there is a line, when the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
So how a neophyte devotee mind will be fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness?
By chanting Hare Krishna in the association of devotees. If you associate with good devotees, you also chant, and when you chant, you're remembering Krishna. And then you'll be engaged in projects like going on Sankirtan, driving the food truck to serve prasadam, taking part in festivals. So all these things direct the mind toward Krishna consciousness. And that's what happens in the association of good devotees. You're always being engaged one way or other in Krishna's service. And planning for it and actually doing it. And all these things are a little difficult. Like now we're going to have Rath Yatra this weekend, right? So we have to get the palanquin ready. We have to have the deities. We have all these things, we have to get all these things together, We have to have the prasadam, the food truck, and the kirtan, and everyone is, comes and engages. And so all those different things keep your mind focused on Krishna. So in the association of good devotees, there's always going to be devotional service. Okay. And then you have to wash the dishes, and you have to cook, and this and that. And everybody's engaged. With flower garlands, so many things. So that keeps your mind focused on Krishna. That's samadhi.
Okay. And Maharaj, one more question. In the today's verse is Narayana para devotees. You have explained the person who is always engaged in worshipping the Lord.
Yes.
So does it mean the same like pure devotee? Like interchangeable words, like pure devotee or
yes. Narayana para. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It says Narayana para Veda. So the Vedas are meant for the Supreme Lord. Right? Deva Narayana Angraja. That is, all the Devi-Devas are meant for serving the Lord. And then Narayana Paraloka, and all planets are meant for the Lord. Right? They all belong to Him. And Narayana Paramakaha, and all sacrifices are meant for the Lord. So a Narayana Para yogi, Narayana Para devotee is one who's only interested in serving Lord Narayana.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Isn't it this week?
Sorry, this week and next week is Kalyana Maharaj. So in the mind, there is a do list for all those services.
Yes.
Is that a Krishna consciousness? It's a constant
Well-
do list of one thing or the other going on.
Yes. Yeah, it's all for Krishna.
But where Krishna is not there, it's just this.
Well, I mean, how can Krishna not be there in Rath Yatra?
I really have Krishna. So this question applies to me, like in my mind, only goes on is the do list of the things, like okay, check mark, this is done, now this.
Well, if the do list is for pleasing Krishna, that's Krishna conscious. If you do things to please yourself, that's Maya consciousness. So as long as we're doing things to please Krishna, we're in Krishna consciousness. So everything depends on the motive. If the motive is to please Guru and Krishna, it's Krishna conscious. If the motive is to please oneself, just like Arjuna did not want to fight to please himself. And Krishna convinced him that that's a mistake and that he should be above all these false pretensions and he should only work to satisfy Krishna. That's the highest morality, right? And even if it means you have to kill some members of your family, right? I mean, that's such an extreme situation, right? No one, I mean, none of us are going to ever be in that situation that we have to kill members of our family, right? But that was the most extreme situation, and Arjuna had to be free of any pretension that he is a member of this family, or this person is my uncle, or my grandfather, or my guru. He had to do what was right. And what was right was follow Krishna's order. So in the same way, we have to make that decision in our life. Whose order are we going to follow? I remember once I went to visit an uncle of mine who came to France, and he wanted to see me. So, and he had some relatives living in France. And so I was hesitating to go and see him because he's a very radical person. But, you know, I finally went because of uncle. And but I took prasadam with me. So they were having lunch and dinner. And I sat down with them, and he, right away, he poured some whiskey in a little glass for everyone, you know, and gave one to me. He said, okay, now raise the glass, we'll have a toast, you know, and then we'll drink. You know. So everyone raised the glass. I didn't raise it, and he got really upset. He said, raise the glass. You know. So, okay, so I raised the glass. I said, and then he said some nonsense words. And, okay, now we'll take this is a toast. Now we'll drink. So I went like this, and I don't know if he actually saw that, you know, but he saw me go like this, you know. He thought I was drinking it, and then he said, okay, now everyone can eat, you know. And they were passing around all these dishes with meat in it and other things, and garlic and onion. And so I kept passing, you know, to the next person, and he said, why are you passing it on? You know, put it on your plate. You know. I said, well, you know, actually, you know, I had brought a plate of prasadam, so I actually brought some food with me, you know. And he said, no, don't eat that. He said, you have to eat our food. And now he got really adamant, you know. And I said, well, I wanted to share some of this with you also. I said, I'm not going to take your food. You know, you take this food, you eat this food. I said, no, I can't do it. I said, what is this? You know, he's got really upset, started screaming at me. So, you know, then I realized it was a big mistake to go there, you know. But see, this is, you have to have a certain baseline belief. And so I believed in prasadam. I don't believe in eating meat, right? Even though it's my so-called family, but actually he's not my family because, you know, he's asking me to do things that are against Krishna consciousness, you know. And he picked up on it right away. That's why he was adamant that you have to eat this meat. You have to drink this whiskey, you know. You have to be one of us. He said, I knew you before. You were like this, and this is, you know, this is some foreign thing. You know, he completely went off his composure. But anyway, We have to be dedicated to serving Krishna and not deviate from that. Haribol. All voices Srila Prabhupada ki jai.